Hey everybody, thanks for coming today. I'm very, very excited. I'm really excited that some of our sling shooters are right here front and center and just enjoying their time at REMARS this year. I'm glad you guys came. Thank you for the support. I'm Melanie Strickland, I'm CEO of Slingshot Aerospace. We're a space sustainability company. I'm gonna walk you through what space sustainability means and why we need it and why humanity around the world actually needs it. But before I start, I'm gonna show you a video.
Space has always captured mankind's imagination. Every time we look up, we see a promise of a better future. New technology and innovation, it gives us hope that as our relationship with space grows, we will create a safer and more connected world so we can dream bigger and deliver on the promise of a better future.
Hey folks, that was me as a child. Not for real, but really. I was one of those dreamers. I loved space, and I grew up in middle of nowhere in West Texas. The skies were very, very dark, and that sky, that night sky, is what inspired me to create a career in space. I'm gonna walk you through what that means today, but even as a child, I was looking up at this Milky Way most nights. In West Texas, it's still considered one of the darkest skies in the world. And I had a trapper keeper. Did anyone else have trapper keepers? Am I dating myself? You did, that's awesome. I had a Star Wars trapper keeper, and in it I had a little notebook, and I would actually look up at the night sky and log satellites and probably meteors too. I didn't know what I was doing, and nor did I think that I would ever have a career in space where that's what we are doing at Slingshot Aerospace. It inspired me to ask for telescopes, to go on family vacations to observatories like McDonald's Observatory in far West Texas. I started my own Young Astronauts Club as a young lady. And of course, every air show that came to San Angelo, Texas, we traveled the hour to get there and look at planes just like this depicted. It led me to the Air Force. I spent 21 years in the United States Air Force. I have zero regrets. And I got to do all of my childhood dreams, cultivate those dreams into a career, and boy did I learn a lot. So I started out flying on a surveillance aircraft looking down at the Earth, and then I crossed over to space after I was going to school nights and weekends, got a degree in aeronautics, and went over to the space side. And I commanded 320 experimental spacecraft missions. It was a very select group of people that got to do those missions, and I was just very, very, very lucky. Right place, right time, and right passion. And that passion is what led us to found Slingshot Aerospace. Slingshot Aerospace is based off the idea that we can reduce the uncertainty on orbit. Today, the orbits are increasingly congested, and it's not just the physical, it's also the non-physical. And so whenever I was in the Air Force, we were tracking about 1,800 operational satellites. By the time we started Slingshot Aerospace in 2017, or excuse me, when I retired in 2017 and started Slingshot, we were tracking about 1,800. 2 years later, doubled. Today, doubled again. We're at 8,000 operational satellites on orbit today, and that does not count the other objects on orbit. That's about 300 million. No air traffic control for space today. So the chance of a collision in low Earth orbit will increase by 700% by 2030. Why? Because the vast majority of investment in this awesome space economy and the space revolution that we're in right now, which we don't want that to stop at all, we just have to reduce the uncertainty. But by 2030, we're looking at 115,000 operational satellites on orbit. That's about the same number of flights that we have around the world from an air perspective. Would you get in any of those aircraft if you knew that you had no air traffic control? Me either. And in the air, we don't have the problems that we have on orbit, right? If two airplanes collide, the debris falls to the ground. In space, it continues going 17,000 miles an hour. Has anyone seen the movie Gravity? Yep. Well, there's something there. It's a phenomena called the Kessler syndrome. And that's a cascading debris on debris event. And with the likelihood of collisions and the increased likelihood of those collisions, any one collision could cause that cascading debris cloud and deem space not usable for a day or two or a year or two, but even hundreds of years. And so our job here at Slingshot Aerospace is to make sure that there's never, ever, ever a day without space. Can you imagine waking up, checking the weather before you head off to work, and there's nothing? Nada. Can't even connect your phone. Can you imagine trying to look at the stock market and everything's just fluctuating to the point where they shut trades down because they don't know what's going on? Can you imagine a day where you are trying to travel and all of the aircraft are canceled, all of the trains are canceled, all of the commute are canceled? Why? Because we as human beings across this world today are completely dependent upon space. All of these are dependent upon space. Even the timing source when you go make a transaction, dependent upon the timing source on GNSS and GPS. GPS isn't just for navigational purposes, right? It certainly helps with that too. We've got to get from one place to another. So, not to hair on fire this, right? There is an answer. And that answer is to truly accelerate space sustainability so that those orbits can be used for future generations to come. I truly believe that space is a portal of progress and a portal of knowledge. And it has to be protected, and we have to get a hold of this. And the only way to get a hold of it is to ensure that we can fly through that complexity and uncertainty. We're not going to fix the huge problem, right? We're going to continue to launch things on orbit. We're going to continue to congest our RF ways, right? Our spectrum is becoming more and more crowded up there. The answer is not stopping that. The answer is reducing the uncertainty. Back in the Apollo days, we were doing modeling and sim on chalkboards, right? In the shuttle days, we were more advanced, however, still siloed and still, when we're thinking about collision avoidance, right? Whenever you've got a human inside of a spacecraft, your thresholds are such that almost zero risk, right? So the infrastructure that exists today for collision avoidance is run by the United States Space Force. Whenever I was in, it was this U.S. Air Force, the 18th Space Control Squadron. And they are the de facto traffic cop. And those thresholds are still set around that shuttle program. So all of these new operators that may or may not have expertise in space, right? Because everybody can put up a satellite now. It's become very advantageous to do so, and a lot cheaper than it used to be. And so what we've got are thresholds that were set for only humans on orbit, right? So they're getting lots and lots of messages. Upward of 1 million collision data messages go out from the 18th Space Control Squadron daily because of those thresholds that were set around human spaceflight. So we've got to do something different. We really do. We have to have a digital infrastructure capable of not only real-time understanding of what's going on in orbit, but the ability to leverage that sensor data, right, in order to do what-if analysis. Take a moment in time. Draw out every eventuality. Well, let's not draw it. Let's do it more autonomous than that, but you get where I'm going. We can't do these things in silos anymore, and we have to connect the community because space is not a jurisdicted national asset, right? So like airspace, you've got air traffic controllers that are very national and regional focused. Because these are going 17,000 miles an hour around the world, around the Earth, it's not jurisdicted. There's not policy. There are some guidelines, but they're not enforceable. And there's no right-of-way. There's no rules like driving or flying or even like on the marine ways in the oceans. And so Slingshot Aerospace is building the world's first digital space twin. What does that mean? For the last 2.5 years, we've been collecting data from multiple phenomenologies across commercial, civil, and defense. And that comes in different phenomenologies like RF data, telemetry data, it's optical data. It's actually data that comes from sensors on board spacecraft, commercial spacecraft. We even use magnetometer data and GPS data to really inform the wider community of what's going on up there. If you could leverage SpaceX's satellites and really understand every time they lose link from a GPS transponder perspective, then you can model out where in these orbits are the jamming happening, right? And you can inform other folks that are flying in those areas, right? And so I'll get to where that is in our platform in a second, but in order to do this and do it right, it has to have live data fed in. It also has to have physics-based models of yesterday meeting data science of today and tomorrow. And that's, why a lot of people ask, why has this problem not been solved today? And it's because it takes a cross-section of capability and skill set, and it's a very, very deep tech problem. And so when you've got to bring in, advanced data management, you've got to bring in advanced analytics, you've got to bring in simulation, and not only all of those things, but you've got to put it in software that's actually collaborative, where people can coordinate across the silos that we've created in this industry for some time. That's our digital space twin. It allows us to do the capabilities on the right side. I'll show you a little better. All right, so as the data comes in, it's got to be normalized and curated. And this is where our partnership with AWS shines. We're able to use S3 and Kinesis for streaming and different microservices. On top of our digital platform, we've actually got two separate products right now. One is the world's first collision avoidance environment called Slingshot Beacon. The other is Slingshot Laboratory. Both have been tested across the commercial and the government, and we're well on our way to having the majority of LEO flyers on Beacon today. Excuse me. So again, earlier I said, would you hop in an airplane if you didn't have air traffic control? I would not, but we are sending some of our most expensive and valuable assets to the human race up without that digital infrastructure today. And so Slingshot Beacon was recently launched. I mentioned a lot of the owner-operators informing this product. That was key. A lot of people think our products are nice looking, they've got a great experience behind them, but if you only knew what was under the hood, you would be amazed. Under the hood is where those models come together and actually answer the call. Beacon, though, allows for owner-operator coordination. It decentralizes the space traffic control problem. So decentralization is key. Whenever we first started working with the owner-operator community that flies these satellites, SpaceX, OneWeb, you name it, we would go in and ask questions, and the minute we said space traffic control or space traffic management, they would gloss over. So we came back with a new tactic and we said space traffic coordination, because what they don't want the stick taken away, right? They've got freedom today. There hasn't been a major accident. There have been some, we could argue that, but they don't want it to be centralized. And so what Slingshot Beacon allows is that decentralization so that they can communicate, they can have the most accurate information posed to them, and they get to set their own thresholds. That's so important in this decentralized theory. By allowing them to set their thresholds and they give us their business logic, we can start to form right-of-way scenarios to inform the entire world. If you're a spacefaring organization, I believe that Slingshot Beacon is paving the way to understanding those right-of-ways. All right, and Slingshot Laboratory. Slingshot Laboratory is an immersive, it's an intuitive space simulation capability. And it first came about because whenever I was going through Advanced Astro back in my space days in the Air Force, we were using some very click-heavy scenario building, siloed capabilities that were desktop generated. They weren't on the cloud. They weren't connected to AWS. And you had to have a certificate really to leverage it. We can't build the next generation of space guardians or even space operators around this world that can own and operate those successfully at 115,000 in number without a different way to train, a different way to simulate, and a different way to design our constellations ahead of launch with real information, real data, dynamically fed, live collaboration, and live over sim training. Earlier I mentioned space moves fast, but what if you could take a moment in time and play out every eventuality and then pick the most optimal path? That's what Slingshot Laboratory allows us to do, and that feeds Beacon, and Beacon feeds Laboratory. And in the end, today we've got upwards of hundreds of terabytes of data that stream into this. And we're not letting anything drop on the floor because there's so many opportunities to work with that data, right? Our data scientists are data hungry, just like everyone's data scientists. And it's a perfect opportunity to really get ahead, because so far in space operations, we've been very, very reactive. And we've got to get predictive. If we're going to prevent collisions, if we're going to make sure space is usable for generations to come, we've got to get in the predictive zone. And this is what allows us to do that. We're not there yet. We're not all the way there yet. Our digital space twin has not launched publicly, but these two products that are riding on the same digital core and those same microservices that we leverage from AWS under the hood are allowing us to pave that path. And we'll continue to do this with the US government, with governments around the world, and more importantly, because there's more commercial than government holistically together now. Whenever I first started in the space realm, honestly, there were about 4 countries that were really spacefaring and leading the charge. Today there's 87 countries. There's 10,000 enabling companies that power those spacefaring organizations. And so we have to accelerate this space sustainability. It's no longer a concept. There are companies out there dedicated to this. Slingshot is just one of them. We're all trying to solve this problem so that we can continue building products for those fellow dreamers, and so that we can one day become multi-planetary species. At least at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that our orbits are usable and that we can continue to live our tech-inclined daily lives without the hindrance of losing space. It will be a bad day. A day without space is a very bad day. But we don't think we're on that pathway now. Us and other companies coming together to solve this around the world, we've really made headwinds over the last couple of years, I would say. And you'll see major arm swings and changes in even how the governments come together and help to decentralize space traffic management. We'll call it space traffic coordination. Thank you, guys.